Welcome everyone to today's special online event, how to skyrocket your sales with WeChat ads. And bear in mind, it's not only applicable for selling, physical retail goods, but also for driving app downloads, attracting university students, anything that can be done with great advertising. And in this session, we'll share with you the ins and outs to succeeding in advertising and selling in China, specifically when it comes to WeChat and WeChat ads. So you'll definitely learn a few things, and whether you're new to the China market or you want to scale up your existing efforts. And brilliant, I'm seeing locations coming in so that I can be completely sure people can hear me. Fantastic. Hello, Samueli from Finland. So now you probably know this, but there's not much point attending webinars and not taking action. So we do these education sessions for free to help you do just that. So please do take notes, make dot points, whatever jives with your particular note-taking style about today's session, and that'll help you to prioritize and clearly show what your next steps and action items are. Okay, so in today's session, we'll cover quite a lot, but in particular, you'll get an overview of how China marketing is different to marketing in the West. There's a lot of similarities, of course. The principles are almost all the same, but there are differences in the culture, in the technology, and in the approach that China and Chinese people have towards buying. So no surprise that being a webinar all about WeChat, we'll take a look at the platform and the channel, what makes it interesting, and most importantly, what the advertising options are and what makes it so powerful and worthwhile from that perspective. We'll share with you some of the experiences AdChina IO users have had advertising on WeChat through our platform, and give a quick demo on just how easy it is to set up and run your ads through AdChina IO. So before we get started today, let's introduce our speakers. Today we're joined by a special guest, Olivia Plotnick. Olivia helps brands in China understand and execute strategies to reach consumers on social media. So Olivia's managed social media accounts for brands in China across different industries and has managed to help and grow several non-profit organizations in Shanghai. After working in agencies, most recently at Ogilvy's Shanghai office, Olivia now runs a boutique social media agency based out of Shanghai. In her spare time, Olivia also sits on the board of directors as president of IPWS, the International Professional Women's Society, a non-profit organization based out of Shanghai that connects professionals with the mission to empower women to change the nature of leadership. As for me, I'm Brad. I work at AdChina IO, and I put together a lot of our educational content around the tech, tools, innovations in the world of Chinese advertising, handle a lot of our communications across email and social media. So I'll present just a couple of things a little later on. And towards the end of our session, you'll be joined by Henrik, a serial entrepreneur and China marketing expert, and Jay, our CEO and co-founder, with extensive experience building international teams and businesses across Europe and Asia. They're both based out of Norway, so Henrik and Jay will take over for the Q&A at the end. So as always, we'll do the Q&A session. If you want to get specific and ask about your industry, your organization, or your niche, please go ahead. We're happy to get specific. And of course, Olivia will join in for the Q&A as well. So if you have any questions that come up during her presentation, be sure to put those into the chat and we'll make sure it all gets covered at the end. And just to explain who we are and what we do at AdChina IO, we help organizations, brands, and businesses get set up and advertise and sell into China. And to be clear, we are a tool first and foremost. So we integrate with all of the top media channels in China, and that allows you to run ads from an easy-to-use platform that's entirely in English. And so we often get asked, and yes, we do, and can help with the campaign strategy and support side of things. We offer that in our subscription packages. But if you're already working with an agency, that's fine. Keep working with them, and we can be the tool that you use to run the ads and to deliver the reports and you can see all that data in an open, reliable, and transparent way. You can continue to work with your agency partners on the strategy side of things. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Olivia Plotnick from Y Social to take us through advertising in China and specifically the ins and outs of WeChat. Welcome, Olivia. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. And it's great to be here with you virtually, coming to you from Shanghai. So good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world at this time. Happy to sit with you here for about the next hour and talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, which is WeChat. I've been living in China for almost 6 years now, aside from the 9 months that I was just trapped outside the country when the borders closed. But I managed to come back and get back to my team here. So as Brad mentioned, I've been working for agencies here in China for the past 5 years and have worked with nonprofits and large companies all on their social media strategy. So before we kind of get into actually WeChat, I really like to take a whole look at, what exactly makes China so different from every country in the world in terms of their technology, in terms of their use of apps and of the internet. And what's pretty staggering is just how much of the population actually is using internet through their mobile phone. So it's nearly 100%, as you can see. Almost all of China's internet users are accessing the internet through their mobile phone. And I think we missed a little graphic here, but year-on-year growth, just to give you a comparison of internet users in the US versus in China. In China, we had year-on-year growth of 80 million, whereas in the US, it was only 8 million. So, not only has internet already penetrated a huge sector of the population, but it is growing at an enormous speed. So because all of these internet users are accessing the internet on their mobile phone, everything happens in the palm of your hand. So when you think about, how users search for products or brands or information, in the West, when we go on our desktop and we're looking at these nice big screens, we're typing in keywords, browsing a lot of different sites. That's not really happening in China. You're doing everything on your smartphone within different apps. And one of those main apps is WeChat. And WeChat really isn't that old. So it was launched in 2011 by Tencent, a company which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And, I remember living in Beijing in 2012, actually, when WeChat, first started, and they were starting to convert a lot of Tencent's QQ, which was an instant messaging desktop app, over to WeChat. Now, today, we have over 1 billion monthly active users. That was as of January 2020. So, if you come to China, most likely you're going to meet every single person here with a WeChat. Now, outside of China, there are about 70 million, I believe is the last number I saw, accounts for people that have WeChat outside. A lot of those are Southeast Asian countries. I get asked the question a lot if WeChat is going to spread to countries in the West, if it's going to be picked up. And, I think the answer really is that it's not going to be adopted by people in Europe or the US, but what you're mainly going to see is a lot of these Chinese who were traveling abroad, when we can travel again, using WeChat, to discover tourist locations, hospitality, or mobile payments, things like that. So it is an important tool still outside of China. We see people spending a lot of time in WeChat. About an hour a day is the average amount of time that people are spending, inside this app. And you are doing everything in just one app. So, you can send payments to a group of people or just to one person. It is a social feed, so it's kind of like Facebook, where you have a Facebook wall and you're able to see posts from your contacts. So your contacts may be sharing links, they may be sharing, small written text updates, They can share up to 9 photos at a time. We can now share videos and short video updates. So it's very much a social feed. You can do things like pay your utilities. So I pay, my water, my gas, my phone bill, all within WeChat. And you can also, order a taxi, you can buy train tickets, you can buy plane tickets, all without ever having to leave this one app. And actually, here is a very good graphic I like to show that kind of encompasses really everything that WeChat is. If you take all these other apps that we're using in the West and you kind of fit them into one app. So it has a huge amount of functionality. That's why, and we can talk about it a little bit later, but you hear a lot of these other apps like Douyin or TikTok and Xiaohongshu, a lot of these other social media apps, they're of course rising in popularity, but WeChat is so much entrenched as a part of people's daily lives that you're still going to have people using it. People are still going to check their moments. They're still going to be messaging. So this isn't going to just go away anytime soon. And I think before we go into, how brands kind of use this, it's important to look at where WeChat started. So when the app was first released, you were really just adding people, everybody to this day, you have a unique QR code, which you can scan and add a friend. So no jumbling with a bunch of, numbers, trying to add somebody into your contact book. But you were able to add people and start messaging back and forth with them. And this second screen is really where WeChat kind of splits from something like WhatsApp, and where they really provide a very unique opportunity. So they started allowing brands to create official accounts. And these brands could push content to anybody that was following them. So you had to specifically be following this brand, and you could receive content from them. And it still does appear directly in your messages feed. So keep that point in mind. We'll come back to it a little bit later. Then WeChat evolved into a mobile payments app. So right around the time of Chinese New Year, where it's very a huge cultural tradition to send, red packets and give people money around this time, WeChat released a mobile payment function where you could send a digital red packet to your contacts and pay people this way. Now, I honestly cannot remember the last time that I used cash in China. I wouldn't be able to tell you where I have any. I don't keep any on me. It's all through mobile payments, mostly through WeChat and sometimes through Alipay as well. And now today, the last screen that you see here is of a mini program. So WeChat has evolved and they now allow apps within WeChat, which is kind of a complicated concept, but basically you can think of WeChat as becoming some sort of operating system. So they now have these small mini apps inside WeChat, and a lot of them have to do with e-commerce. So a lot of brands will have a mini program that is very customizable, almost like their website in China. So consumers can browse their products, they can easily share these products with their contacts on WeChat, and they can purchase them just within a few clicks. So it's a very, very, very easy purchase journey on WeChat. And this is a really unique platform for brands because you're able to send content into someone's personal messages. So unlike, Facebook or Instagram, where of course it is personal, you're following your friends and your family, maybe some influencers, and of course brands can have sponsored posts or they can send you content in there. But really with WeChat, this is your main messaging platform. Email is not widely used in China. So WeChat is where you're going to communicate with, your family, your friends, your coworkers, potential clients and customers. And so brands are able to enter this almost very sacred space. And that's what makes it so difficult as well. if you're pushing out irrelevant content, if you are doing it too often or too little, people are going to unfollow you. And that's why it is so, so, so difficult for brands on WeChat, because it's so hard to get followers. It's so hard to actually gain attention. This screen on the right, you'll see, that is almost what my phone looks like on a Friday evening. A lot of brands tend to push out content on a Thursday or Friday. No reason why. There's no data to support that works the best, but they tend to do it anyways. And so you'll see your account can just end up with only content from brands if you're following quite a lot. So it can be, really overwhelming to receive all of this content. Now, there's over 20 million official accounts is the last data that WeChat released about this. So that's a lot of accounts. And actually some data from last year, which I didn't put in here, but only 3% of those accounts receive over 10,000 views on their articles. So it's really, really difficult to grab attention. The average read rate of articles is around 1,400 reads. And this is a 24% drop from the year before. So that is a huge, huge drop in how difficult it is to gain attention. The average user is really only following about 20 accounts. So the screen that you saw previously, with all this content from all these brands, I'm following close to, I think, 900 accounts. So it's a little bit of an exaggeration. But, over the years, people have just unfollowed accounts at a very high rate because so many brands were pushing out such terrible content that they just didn't want to be following these accounts anymore. Now you'll see here as a brand, when you send a message, it shows up kind of as a message from anybody else on your contact list was, and then you're able to, to have several articles and content attached there. Now, what exactly can content look like on WeChat? Here's, another thing that I really love about this platform is that I think people don't realize that you can have really amazing content on here. So of course you can have things that look a little bit more like a blog, so very straightforward, but you can also have, really interactive content on here. So you can have things that people need to slide, you can have things that people need to tap and different photos will come up. You can have really fun animations. So you can make this content really actually interactive and exciting. This is a campaign from H&M over the holidays where you had to, shake your phone and play a little game. And then it gave you videos and an opportunity to connect to their e-commerce store. So there's really a lot that you can do. This example is from an Italian toothpaste brand. They recently did a campaign with just amazing, amazing illustrations and graphics on it. But what makes WeChat, so different? We talked about that. It's very hard to get attention, and it's this kind of sacred space that you're entering. But the other, really big differences are that it's a very closed ecosystem. So we call it like a walled garden. It is not a tool necessarily for discovery. I think too many brands come in and they hinge on WeChat for their, end-all be-all platform for discovery in China. And this should really be used as a platform to nurture existing leads, to build loyalty programs, and to, push out really high quality content. So it's also, it gives you pretty limited tracking if you're just using, the basic functions. Can't tell so much about your current followers and your audience. So you'll hear a lot this term called private traffic, which is brands will actually build up their own WeChat groups. There's their own group chats, almost like a WhatsApp group chat, but it will be run and managed by the brand. So they have a lot closer access to their customers. And there's not really anything like SEO on WeChat. Over the years, we've seen this build up a little bit, but it's, to no comparison of Google, putting out blogs and hoping that your SEO is going to improve over time. Within the past few years, we do see people searching a lot more in WeChat, and they've just released new features that allow you to link hashtags to articles, which gives you a little bit more in terms of options for discovery, but it's still very, very tricky. So like we were talking about, it's a closed ecosystem. When you receive a message from a brand, you could potentially share it on your moments. However, if you share something on your moments, only those people who you are connected with are going to see this content that you shared. If you have a connection and they like this post, their connections won't see it, as you can do, on Facebook or LinkedIn. So it doesn't really spread that much. You can have top stories where you can see what your friends are reading, so your content may be discovered in this way. And of course, through group chats. So group chats we find are one of the biggest drivers for getting content read for a lot of brands. They're sharing it in relevant group chats, or they're building their own. Like I mentioned, there's very limited tracking. So, you're able to get basic demographic info, but you're not, unless you're using a third-party platform, you're not really able to get specific info on most of your followers. And there's not really any SEO. So like I mentioned, now we have this hashtag ability just within the past few weeks that was released. But there's not really, for accounts that have been publishing content for a long time, they're not gaining followers through having amazing SEO. And growth is really slowing. So to give you a visualization of kind of the numbers that I was talking about earlier, this gives you an idea of the read rate over time. So, back a few years ago when there were not so many brand accounts, it was a lot easier to get your content read for sure. And now we just have so many posts going on. And the second slide to the right shows you the two different types of official accounts that brands can have, and just how their follower and subscription rate is dropping pretty significantly over time. So this is where we get into WeChat ads. And I think, before we talk about ads, it's really important to go back and talk about the founder of WeChat. So this is Alan Zhang. And his whole concept, his whole idea of WeChat was that it's an amazing user experience. So unlike Facebook or Instagram, even LinkedIn or Google, you are not having all these ads popping up at you all the time. Alan Zhang has always restricted brands and this ability for brands to bombard people with content. So brands from an official account, they're only allowed to make 4 pushes per month. So you can't even be sending messages all the time, just whenever you want. You can only do it 4 times per month. And he also limited ads only to, a few years ago. It wasn't always, brands didn't always have the ability to do advertising on moments. And now today, a user can only see, or they will only see, up to 2 ads in their moments feed within a day. So normally when I'm browsing through my moments, looking through the social feed, I will see about 1 per day, sometimes 2. So it's very rare that you will get an ad. And, Alan Zhang has really made this a point about WeChat, is to be very, very protective of the user experience. So when you're creating ads, I think it's really important to keep this in mind, that users on WeChat, they're not used to, or they're not expecting a lot of advertising. So when you're creating an ad, this needs to be very personal. It needs to, essentially really not feel like an ad more than any other platform. And there's a couple of, placements and ways that you can utilize advertising on WeChat. So you can have a banner ad at the bottom of an article, which is usually cheaper than having a moments ad. You can have a moments ad, like I talked about, which will appear, in this social feed. You can have advertising within a payment message. So if you buy something with a mini program and you receive a receipt from your service messages, you can have the ability to have a banner ad there. You can have ads within mini programs, and you can also have in-game ads as well. So to kind of dive deep on two of the most popular ones that I see most of the time are the ads at the bottom of the article. So these tend to be a little bit less expensive, but it's a lot harder to grab attention. So keep in mind that on average, we find that only about 15 to 20% of people who open the article actually read the whole entire article all the way until the end. So even if you have, 1,400 people who are reading the article, only a small percentage of those are actually going to make it all the way through down to where the ad is placed. Now, the other one that I see the most often is on Moments. So it's definitely the most visible, the most eye-catching. However, as the same with sending messages or sending content as a push post, this is also a really sacred space. So users, they're only seeing 1 to 2 ads per day. So if this is something that is very, very salesy or just not targeted to your audience, it's really not going to land well or perform well. And so before I leave you, I just want to kind of leave you with a few last points about things to remember when you're creating content for WeChat. As we discussed at the beginning, WeChat is used for, almost literally everything. So with your content, with any ads that you're doing, you're really going to have a lot of noise to break through and a huge barrier to get through. So, I know this sounds very cliche, but you really have to know who you're targeting. And for China, this comes at an even, bigger importance, because in China, it's not just, one country. There are so many different dialects. There are so many different regions. There are so many different cities, and they're all such distinct cultures within themselves. That's something, if you run an ad that targets people in Beijing, that ad is, probably not going to land the same as it is if you run something in the South in Guangzhou. So really understanding, who you are actually targeting, who you're speaking to with these ads. And I think, keeping in mind that WeChat is not going to be your main discovery channel in China. Just because it's used by the majority of the population doesn't mean that you should put all your eggs in the WeChat basket. Of course, it's a very important channel and you definitely should be on it for the most part, but you're going to have to take a look at, what other social media apps are your customers using? What other e-commerce apps are they using, if that is applicable? Can you do something offline? How can you engage people in an actual experience? So WeChat, is not your one size fits all solution for China. And I think, another important thing is ads can be really great for exposure. Something like Moments ads can be really great for exposure, but that's 50% of the job. Let's say you get, 200 new followers from this ad that you run on Moments. And this ad, is not really, it's a great ad. It caught people's attention, but it's too far removed from actually the content that you start publishing on your official account. It is so easy for people to unfollow accounts, especially when you pull them in with campaigns or influencers or advertising. There's a lot bigger risk to actually lose those followers. So, when you're doing this ad, make sure that it actually ties into your larger content strategy, that people aren't going to be surprised or shocked when they then receive a message from your brand in their personal feed with content that just isn't relevant at all. And the last point is, expect to play the long game with WeChat. I think a lot of brands come in from the West and where they're spending, $5 or $10 on some sponsored posts for Instagram or Facebook, and they're getting a ton of new followers in. and you put money into WeChat and it takes you 6 months to get to 1,000 followers. So it's really a long game. It's really have to be very, very conscious with your content. I think, and don't take the long game to mean as you plan out your whole year's worth of content and you sit there and you just kind of deploy it. I think WeChat, it is a long game, and it's a game that has to be played really upfront, really instantly. Things are changing in China so quickly. WeChat, is constantly introducing these new functions, new things to play around with. So you have to have this long-term mindset with a very kind of short-term execution strategy. So yeah, that is all from me at the moment. Hopefully it wasn't too quick or fast of an overview through everything, but happy to stick around and take your questions.
Fantastic.
Afterwards.
Thanks, Olivia. Lots of great information there. It was a great session and lots of value in that presentation. And it was great to learn more about the WeChat platform and what to keep in mind when it comes to running WeChat ads. Now, there are a few things that I wanted to cover as well. And firstly, it'd be great to get into the weeds a little bit and talk about the numbers. So originally I considered doing breakdowns for different industries and different verticals, but actually there wasn't a huge degree of variation in our data. So rather than, complicate things, I thought it best to keep it nice and simple. So if you look at the WeChat Moments ads, the ones that are kind of like Instagram stories, you can only do CPM or optimized CPM campaigns. So if you're going for clicks, that optimization has to be in how you present the ad. WeChat actually doesn't give the optimization, doesn't do that for you. So optimized CPM just means that it's tied to a particular conversion goal, similar to how Facebook ads are. So that might be generate lead information, drive app downloads, promote an e-commerce store, that sort of thing. So by far the biggest variable is who you're actually targeting. So tier 1, that's Beijing and Shanghai. If you target those regions, then you pay a premium. So they've got the highest purchasing power, and that goes hand in hand with higher costs for you to reach them. And so the tier 2 cities, they're a little more expensive to advertise to and have a little lower purchasing power. And then for the other cities, they are extremely affordable to reach, but a little less likely to buy. Now, that said, tier 3 and tier 4 cities, especially this year, have accelerated their purchases the highest rates of all. So obviously still not the best choice for, premium and luxury goods, but especially for practical things, can definitely be a worthwhile market. And as always, we say at every webinar, the idea and the key is really to test, see what works, dial down what doesn't work, dial up what does work. Also wanted to share with you the results from a recent campaign we did for a company. Now this campaign ran for 7 weeks and had a budget of 4,500 CNY, which is 670 USD. So in this particular WeChat campaign, quite beneficial from a get the word out perspective. It secured a bunch of followers, also had a good amount of clicks and a couple of leads. And now what makes the followers valuable is that it will continue to offer value over time. So that's one major plus of WeChat ads. You can make posts that go out just to your followers, and those aren't ads. So I'm sure you can see why growing your followers would be great if you're thinking about the future and wanting to improve your ROI over time. Okay, so now I wanted to take a look at the AdChina.io platform. So I'll share my screen and we can take a look at how to set up a WeChat Moments ad. So I'll come down to share my screen. I'll make sure I select the right screen. And now you should be seeing my screen. Yep, perfect. Okay, so we are just logged into the AdChina.io platform. And in here, you can go into the marketplace. You can see all of the different channels, and you can click through to those to get breakdowns on those particular channels. There'll be videos and images and showing you exactly what you can and can't advertise. Well, I'm not sure if they go into what you can't advertise. There are a number of industries and verticals that China doesn't allow for advertising. If you're not sure whether you're in that gray area or not, just get in touch and we'll be able to help you with that. So yeah, you can see with WeChat, these are the conversion goals essentially that you can set up in there, and you can see that for all of the channels. Won't spend too much time on that though. I want to get into setting up an ad. I'll go back to Ads Manager on WeChat. So I want a WeChat Moments ad, and I'll do an 800 by 800 with images and text. So you can see all of the different placements that you can do here. And we've got an example of what each of those looks like on the right side of the screen. So if we come down, I will just put in placeholders there and click through to setting up the ad itself. So you can target based on locations, whether that's a particular city or overseas. I'll just select the tier 2 cities for now. Of course, you can select by age, and you've got all of the sort of typical criteria there. But with WeChat and a lot of the Chinese channels, but especially Tencent's channels, you can go very heavily into the data, and it collects a lot of data about people, and you can see exactly the kinds of cars. So you've got, say, cheap car, mid-range car, exclusive car. So there's just this wealth of data, and it gets highly, highly specific. And you can go through and target based on interests and behaviors. Now, as you're making these changes, you can see the reach and the impressions adjusting as you do it. So I'll set up an ad. We'll do it for, let's go 20 to 40 men with degrees or in high school. You can leave everything else. Let's go, let's just do all sports. And you can see that the reach has changed to 12 million and the impressions to 30. Now, of course, that depends on the budget, so that's to be factored in as well. So interests, a little bit of a difference between interests and behaviors. Interests, a bit more broad and a bit less actions that someone needs to take to be tagged as interested. If it's a behavior, then there's basically a higher bar, so they've engaged with it a bit more deeply, and it's been tagged as a behavior. You can go into marital status and occupation as well. And you come through, put in your creative. So this is the only section that will need to be in Chinese if you do it. I'm just going to use this square image. This is not an image that you would use to run an ad, just a placeholder for me to go through this. And then you would have your Chinese text. I will just put in a placeholder here, but you can use translation services. You can use Ad China. You can use anyone who is familiar with the native language. Do not recommend Google Translate. It has issues with the Eastern languages, and you don't want to commit a social or cultural faux pas by having inaccurate text on your ads. So I will just leave it. You can schedule the date and time and have it run during certain hours, or you can just leave that unset. That's fine. And if you click through to save and next, you can just set your budget, hit submit, and it will give you a summary of everything that we've just gone through. And when you hit confirm, it'll go through to the channel, and typically that is live within 1 business day. So I will stop sharing my screen now. Actually, before I do, once the campaign's been run, you can go in and see the reports. So you can see the impressions, the clicks, the total cost, the average click-through rate, the CPM and the CPC on the particular campaigns. And not only that, you can dive in more detail and look at the locations. So which locations were actually driving the bulk of these conversions, what was the gender, what was the age, and you can see that for each of the ads and each of the campaigns that you run. So now I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'll bring the slides back up. So if you want to access the DSP, the platform that I've just shown, you can sign up for free at dsp.adchina.io. It is entirely free, of course, to join. And so in there, you can learn about the different channels. You can check out the marketplace like I showed and see the channel information. You can do a whole bunch of different things, set up official accounts and get validated through the platform, and see the impression and reach estimates to dial in a really good audience for your advertising. So now it is time, of course, for the Q&A. With that said, I'd like to welcome back Olivia, Henrik, and Jay. I will turn off my video very shortly. And if you haven't already, be sure to add your questions into the chat now. And as we said, if you want to get specific and ask about your organization, your industry, anything like that, please feel free. And yeah, Henrik, Olivia, Jay, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brad, and thank you very much, Olivia, for a very interesting presentation on WeChat. There's so much to learn, so much to know that I always find something new. And I think since we have 16 minutes left, I think we just jump straight in. The first question is, as a B2B company, what can we do to drive more leads with WeChat? Jay, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, I can start on that one. Thank you again, Olivia. Very good presentation. On the B2B side, actually, we have a lot of B2B customers. And from our experience, that has been a very big challenge for them, trying to reach out to their targeted audience, which is usually businesses and sometimes even industries actually. And then we have seen that most of the Chinese social media are very much targeted towards the consumers. And that is something that they have been facing the challenges. And also, of course, I mean, in Chinese market is so big that it is very hard to find the right audience with a limited budget, because as Olivia mentioned, it's an ocean of information and also an ocean of official accounts on the different platforms, including WeChat. So what we have experienced is that for companies that are targeting on B2B audience, they probably want to be a little bit careful in the beginning, especially for the B2B companies. What we have seen working is that they first of all need to establish their, we call it, digital assets on potential platforms, and WeChat is one of them. What we are trying to come up with for our customers on the B2B side is a combined solution, which is a multi-channel. WeChat is definitely something, because it's used for almost everything. So there is no doubt that your targeted audience are on WeChat. But there are two more questions to ask. One is that whether they are using WeChat as a place for gathering information about the product or services that you're trying to sell. That's the first question. Second question, is there a chance or a good way, I would say cost-efficient way for you to reach them in a targeted manner? What we have experienced is that it's not always working for everyone, but it's definitely a channel worth to try. Our approach is to use minimum of the budget to try out different channels. For B2B customers, of course, WeChat is something that we want to work with, at least test out from the beginning with very limited budget as well. And also what we also have in place is, for example, some news apps, including Toutiao from ByteDance, and Tencent News, which is also integrated with our China.io platform. And also, of course, last but not least, LinkedIn China. LinkedIn China is totally disconnected with LinkedIn for the rest of the world for obvious reason. So yeah, what I would suggest is a multi-channel approach. and try to test out with the small campaigns. WeChat is definitely something that you should not, at least not from the beginning.
Thanks, Jay. Olivia, anything to add on to that?
No, I think Jay covered it all.
Okay, as I think one thing for me, whenever I get asked by companies, like is there any use for us on WeChat? And what I always tell them is, in China, whenever you go to a conference, whenever you go to a seminar, an expo, things like that, and you see, if you just imagine you see your dream customer, the CEO of the company is sitting there watching this keynote talk. And if you pay close attention, you'll see if his attention ever wanders off the speaker, it goes right to WeChat on his phone. And it's one of the few channels where you can reach almost literally, but figuratively, everyone in China. Yeah. Olivia, I figured this next one, maybe you know the answer. I don't know. One of the questions was how many WeChat accounts are branded versus individuals? If you have any numbers on that.
I haven't seen WeChat release any figures on that. You mean like how many out of official accounts, like how many are bloggers and how many are from actual brands, or how many are like personal users?
Yeah, so Miguel, if you want to clarify the question. Okay, so basically how many are personal versus corporate?
Sure. So there are the latest figures that WeChat released were that there were over 20 million official accounts, and there are almost 1.2 billion monthly active users. There's some, I can't remember the exact number, but one of a good friend who runs another agency was putting together a report actually on the number of personal accounts. And when you look at it, the number of personal accounts actually is higher than the population of China, which can tell you that a lot of people in China actually have more than one account, which I have several personal accounts that we use to manage, different brand accounts. Many people who are sales representatives will have multiple accounts. The need for that is getting a little bit less now with things like WeChat Work, which allow you to more clearly manage your sales contacts. But yeah, something kind of interesting there, which I'm not sure it's what you were looking for, but there's definitely a lot of personal accounts out there. But the latest number, branded accounts, Tencent release was 20 million.
Thanks for that. And one thing I just wanted to add is, on the number of accounts, like through China.io for WeChat Moments, we have an estimated maximum result of about, targeting just for example, in the tier cities, there's about 674 million daily estimated reach, and about 238 for T2 and about 50 million for the T1, which is a little bit over the population. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of people using WeChat, which is part of the value. Next question, as a Spanish language teacher, how can I get students from China? So I think this was originally asked around WeChat, but I think maybe it's good to have the answer broad. Do you want to start off with that one, Olivia?
Sure. So I think one thing actually that comes to mind at first is Douyin. If you are able to get a SIM card and use the Chinese version of TikTok, I've seen actually a lot of success with English teachers or people, teaching English on Douyin, just through these short 15-second videos. They've built amazing followings on there. So, people who are using Douyin are looking to be entertained. It's not really a platform that's so great for conversion, but, it's great to kind of build an audience and build awareness on there. Maybe Jay can speak to if there's, specific examples that you guys have had of, targeting students or things like this on WeChat, actually.
So on this one, it's, one thing there though is that would be like a personal account, not a business account, unless you have a Chinese company. And I mean, that's a bit of the issue there as well for a lot of language, how to say, a lot of schools, educational institutions is in China, in order to advertise, you have to have a registered company, and there's a certain amount of initial top up to start with, which is, how to say, which is not too scary anymore, but it does depend on, the budget you have. So for example, right now, the, how to say, I think the initial top up dropped 10x for WeChat, meaning that you can get started. It used to be around 50,000 CNY to get started advertising. Now we can do it for about 5,000. So this has, put the bar a lot lower. But the other thing is also like, where do you do the conversion, right? And this, I think what you said there, Olivia, is a very, very good idea, is to build, you can get a lot of attention on Douyin and things like that. But the question is, where do you take it from there? And getting the traffic out of the different channels in China can be quite challenging. So for example, one option is to have a WeChat mini program where you interact with your followers. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about that on one of the next questions around e-commerce stores. But I hope that that helps answer the question on Spanish language teacher. Next one, I think for Jay, how is ByteDance for advertising mobile application? And I think this question is also related to Ocean Engine, the API engine of ByteDance.
Of course, the topic of the webinar is around WeChat and a little bit wider to Tencent. But it's worth to mention that ByteDance, as a group of companies or a group of applications, they have become the largest advertising channel or media channel in China online. Not only because of the speed of the pickup of their applications, but also because of their, I would say, focus on the advertising business as well. I think Tencent have managed to hold their urge of, let's say, monetizing on their traffic via advertising in the past, I would say, decade. They could have done it much earlier and much faster than the others, but they have been very cautious about that. But then on the contrary, ByteDance have been very strong when it comes to supporting advertisers on their platform, capitalizing the traffic that they're generating. So that lead to one fact, which is the Ocean Engine, which is the advertising, I would say, backend of almost all their products in ByteDance, much more advanced than any other platforms in China. At China.io platform, our platform, of course, we had to, and we were connected with them a long time ago. And we have been having a lot of customers using their applications there to market different products as well, software and apps included, actually. That's one of our top 4 industries that we have our customers from, meaning mobile apps and so on. But at the same time, you have to understand that the largest mobile app, call it marketplace in China, is held by Tencent. It's this app store called Yingyongbao, run by Tencent. So you can and you should try to utilize Ocean Engine to improve the downloads in China if you're launching it in China. But also, again, coming back to our multi-channel suggestion strategy, we would also suggest anyone who wants to go to China to consider, with their mobile apps, to consider to advertise on or within the Tencent ecosystem as well, because of this largest mobile app marketplace run by Tencent. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how specific I need to be into this Ocean Engine, but if you want, I mean, anyone in this webinar is welcome to go into our platform and play with Ocean Engine through our API connection with them as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and one thing to add there is also that we have an integration with Apps Flyer as well. So those who want a closed loop tracking for their app advertisement, that is possible to get. On the next question, very interesting here as well, Olivia, what's your thought on a strategy for WeChat for selling PC games?
Ooh.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't think we've ever dealt with any company who's selling PC games in China. I don't know, Jay, have you ever?
So
I would first, I would first, honestly, the first thought that comes to mind is you can use a mini program actually to drive downloads, to drive people to a game. So you can kind of have a light version of this. A lot of times what you'll see kind of apps or games do is they have this mini program. For example, a Facetune app, you can access like 6 filters on the mini program, and then they drive you to download the app. So that would be one example of being able to use WeChat to kind of give a little preview, use mini programs, which are very easily shareable. You can do great moments advertising with mini programs and driving people in there and kind of give them a taste of what you're doing and then convert them that way.
Yeah.
But I don't know
and
if Jay has any other suggestions.
yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention there as well is one of the things that's really amazing with Tencent for PC games and mobile games is that you have such strong targeting around the games. Like when it comes to behavior, Brad showed like a tiny snippet there earlier, but he didn't make it all the way down to the games section. But we have everything from like turn-based games to RPG to like specific, like the games console, like mobile games like League of Legends, sports game, chess game, board simulation, racing, puzzle, flight, shooting, fighting, adventure. Like it's so specific because people are using WeChat so much. So it's, how to say, it's definitely possible to drive very strong traffic with the Tencent ads. It's more about figuring out the next step there. It can be like we've seen some cases before where we're able to drive the traffic to a store, but it's very much dependent on like a case by case basis for games, like where it is, because it is a bit of a gray zone, because in China there the games need the approval to be allowed to sell. So when we're working to promote and advertise international games, it's not that it's illegal, it's just that, how to say, there's not a clear policy for it. We have to be very careful, and it's on a case-by-case basis how to do the conversion there. And I think this leads very well to the next question, which is for e-commerce stores on Shopify, how can we drive traffic from China? Which channels? And here, from the top of my mind, I don't think that there is any channel at the moment where we're allowed, that we've been approved to drive ads traffic directly to the Shopify store. The only thing that I can think of here is in the WeChat, like basically setting up a WeChat official account, you put the link to your Shopify store in the OA menu, the official account menu. In that way, you can get the traffic to leave the WeChat system and go to your Shopify e-commerce store. But what we generally do with our customers is we help them set up a WeChat mini program for the, how to say, basically taking their Shopify store and recreating it in a way on the WeChat mini program, and then selling through there, because then you can just drive the traffic directly in with the amazing targeting that Brad showed earlier. Olivia, anything to add to that, like maybe just in general on retail or specifically towards Shopify?
Yeah, I think you made a very good point that you can have it actually in your WeChat menu. And I would say that it's really important to not, if you can, to not make people go outside of WeChat. Everything in China for consumers is so easy. So if you make things more difficult by, if I have to go into my browser, if I have to, jump 5 steps to actually go to your e-commerce store, I'm not going to do that because I can go somewhere else within, 2 or 3 clicks. Like, you have to make it so easy for someone because they're used to being able to just browse products, purchase, within 1 or 2 clicks. So it's quite, I think, almost detrimental to drive somebody out when you can create a mini program very cheaply, very fast. They're very effective, and they're really great for the consumer to use.
Then, yeah, so next question was, do I have to wait a business day till the ads I create via your platform to go live? So in general, yes, it doesn't necessarily have to be a full business day. It depends on the checking how long it takes. But every advertisement that's created is manually approved before it goes live. And this is done by the channels because they are the ones who are in the end responsible for the advertising on their channels. So they take it very, very seriously. But it's, like if you're used to advertising in the West, it's not different from, what's going on with Facebook, Google. There's always that verification time, and it's basically the same in China. Let's see, we have 2 questions left. Jay, I think the next one is for you. So about AdChina.io, if we build a WeChat paid ad in the platform, would we be able to access audience group in the Tencent DMP platform?
Right now, I think, first of all, if you know the history of WeChat, it's almost a spin-off, internal competing product of QQ, which is the previous, I think still quite dominating social media platform in Tencent. So in the beginning, these 2 parts or ecosystem or WeChat have been outside the kind of the official backend of advertising platform in Tencent. But these days, they have been making the effort to combine these 2. And our APIs are being upgraded, updated, and so on. We see that the direction is towards that direction. So going forward, I would assume that in a matter of months, within a year, we will be able, or they will probably come up with something similar to Ocean Engine of ByteDance, which is covering most, if not all, their media channels. So that might be our prediction, but not at this moment. Not at this moment. At this moment, we still have to treat them a little bit differently. But again, coming back to the value of our platform, that's all exactly why we built this platform. With this platform, you have a multi-channel capability. Either they are from the same company or they are from different companies. And it is important to be able to compare the performance of different campaigns via different channels, of course, with different messages and target groups and so on, different combinations in short.
Yeah. And then I think just the last question we have, Olivia, maybe if you want to start answer this one. So it's this one is a little bit different, but it's I am a university student. I would like to work in this sector to help Italian brands to be strong in China. Do you have any suggestions?
And I think this person noted as well, it's hard to get into China at the moment.
Yes.
So it kind of takes my number one answer. I get asked this question a lot. I actually have an article specifically answering this question on my LinkedIn page. So there's a lot of good links in there. But my first answer is always to just come to China somehow. It's very difficult to understand what's going on here or to keep up with what's going on here when you're outside. And I'm sure you guys can relate. I can definitely relate. I wasn't here for 9 months, and now being back, I can really feel the difference and notice the difference just from being able to watch people on the subway, see how people are going into stores, interacting, with each other, what they're looking at, what they're buying. So it's, amazing to be able to come here. I think another thing I always suggest is, try and do your own work, like try and read as much as you can, follow every single Italian brand on WeChat. There are thousands, I'm sure. Look at what they're posting, look at their content, look at everything that they're doing. follow these people who are working for these companies on LinkedIn, reach out to them. I think there's a whole community of people who are sharing information about what's going on in China, and it's not really in a traditional sense because it's all happening so fast and so updated. So you need to be, actually following what the brands are posting or what these people who are working here are saying. But yeah, just try to get your foot in the door anyway somehow and come to China when you can, when it's open again.
Jay, any advice from you?
Always really market for helping the others to do that, because Lucia, right? You will create value. You are contributing value by doing this. Because first of all, Chinese market is the largest market in the world, and it's going to be even more so going forward. Second, there is a kind of rebalancing of the world value chain ongoing right now. And by doing this, by helping Italian brands and companies to go into Chinese market, you're helping with that process and trend as well. And also from our experience, we built this platform at China.io, trying to automate as much as possible on this marketing process. But then what we have realized from the beginning as well, there's one role that can never be replaced by the software. That is the the knowledge, the idea in different industries, in your specific industry, and also your local knowledge, and also your trust with the local brands out there. That is very important because the cultural difference is so much. Olivia is living in China, and she probably can prove this as well. It is important to have that kind of intermediate, as either from a consultant or from a media agency that is locally in Italy, that you have to be able to communicate this all the way through. Or in the worst way, you have to shield your client locally in Italy from all the complexity and hard to understand things. It's very hard. It's very easy to get frustrated, and say, forget about it. I will go to, say, Switzerland instead of China. But then, it's if you really want to go global, and if you really look at also the outlook of the global economy right now, China is where the opportunity is where the market is. And we don't know what's going to happen next year, but what we know for sure is that at least until end of 2021, China will continue to be the strongest market for consumer or business industrial products across the world. And this is something no one should ignore. And I think your contribution locally there will create value. So welcome to the club.
And I want to, just before I hand back to you, Brad, for the wrap up, I want to give also two suggestions to you, Lucia. One thing is, look at joining your local business association for China. So for example, in Norway, we have the Norway China Business Association, which does a lot. And every country in the world has this type of business association. So just reach out to them and start volunteering, or even just join as a member if that's an option for you. I think most of these have special pricing for students, but I think it's even better if you can join and donate some of your time to help them run the events, things like that, because then you build the network so amazingly quickly. And then, you also start to understand what's the challenges they have. You understand, which of the Italian companies are going to China, things like that. And the other specific suggestion I wanted to mention is, and is a little bit, similar to what Olivia recommended, is, do some work and just write some content, come up with a blog post. For example, like Olivia said, do a research, figure out these brands, these Italian brands are on WeChat. Here is what they write about, anything that has some data, some validity to it. For example, by ranking them by the number of WeChat posts that is currently available, things like that, or taking the top 10 Italian brands, looking at which of the features of WeChat do they use? Do they post frequently? Do they have a WeChat mini program? Things like that. And then afterwards, reach out to agencies and also tools like AdChina.io and ask if they would publish the post for you in your name, with a link to your profile somewhere, and if you do this over time, you'll start to build the name for yourself in the industry, even while you're in the university, so you can get a running start. And yeah, that's just some advice there. Thank you very much for all your questions, everyone. I hope we've managed to answer. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Brad.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for joining, or I'll put my video on. I'm glad you're able to be here, and I hope you found the content and the answers to those questions valuable and useful to you. Just one thing to confirm, Olivia, I know it's very new, so I wanted to check with you. Does Why Social have a website, or is that still in the pipeline?
It is coming out next week, but I think the best place if you want to reach me is probably my LinkedIn. So you can just search my name. I'm sure it's somewhere on the marketing materials here. I post a lot of content about China and WeChat and marketing in China. And I have a lot of articles on there as well for resources. So there's always a lot of good stuff to find there. So you can just search my name. I can write it in there.
You can put that in chat, Olivia
box.
Plotnick. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone who joined today, participated and asked their questions. Hope to see you again next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.